Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sanya Bari channel. We have a very special guest today. Her name is Lisa Shohen, and she is a licensed professional counselor, a therapist with two amazing specialties. Both of her specialties are my favorite, which is why I'm here so that all of us, can learn from her. Her first specialty that she did for many years was regarding eating disorders, which is such a hot topic, and we have so much to learn there. And the other one is regarding betrayal and betrayal trauma. And so, welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, absolutely. So, Lisa, you have two locations, am I right?
Yes, I have an office in Midland Park, and then the other one, I have a home office that I'm speaking from today where I do my virtual sessions.
Wonderful. And so, Lisa, we were speaking about what it is that you would like people to know, because many times we're seeing clients and we're speaking to whatever they're bringing up. But you have such a vast experience in these two specialties. You have an experience as a therapist. You've been in private quarters with so many people in their deepest, darkest moments. And also, you have had your own full life. And if I were just to ask you as a human being, one person to another, that what message do you have from all of your learning? So I'm not going to go for one specialty. I'm going for the entire Lisa, the practitioner, the person. What is it that you would love to tell all of us? What would you like us to learn and know?
Well, the thing that I love about my practice is that I get to see people who are coming in struggling. And during our time together, with different modalities that we use and techniques, I've gotten to witness people rise above. And that's probably the best message that I would want to get across, is that no matter what we've been dealt in life, sometimes we have these ground zero moments, or where it feels like our house has burned down and we have to start from the scratch and build our new life. And but it's possible.
That's beautiful. And so, and I know that you also have a podcast that's called Rising
Yes,
Stronger.
right. Rising Stronger. And it
Yeah.
talks all about rebuilding and the different tools and resources you could do to strengthen yourself, to get to your best and truest life, connect with your inner self and that intuition, all of the good things.
Wonderful, Lisa. So I'm going to tap into both of your specialties, and then we'll become a little bit more general. So as far as the eating disorders is concerned, and I was speaking to you earlier about, we all have a little bit of that going.
Yes.
And my daughter, as she's gotten older, has taught me so much about my own behavior that can that can be problematic. And so, what message do you have? Something that all of us can learn from, something that we might have a blind spot around, people that are raising young men and women that are working with themselves. What is it that you'd like us to learn and know?
Well, I think one of the big things I'd like people to know is that sometimes with eating disorders, there's a lot of incorrect information out there. There's people assume that if you have an eating disorder, that you have a specific body type. That is not true. Sometimes people think that it's just a matter of somebody being vain or overly obsessed with their bodies. And the irony is that even though there can be a major preoccupation with that, an eating disorder has nothing to do really with foods or our bodies. Those are just some of the symptoms that we see that go for something that's inside that needs to get looked at.
Wow. So, what you're saying is that even though it sounds like the focus is food, and you know what? If we can just get you to eat or not eat,
Yeah.
then we're going to be fine. We just have to fix this surface thing out there. What you're saying is something that, makes sense. It makes sense to us that, okay, it's going to have to be something deeper, which is why it's so hard to let go of it in eating disorder.
Yes.
So what do you typically see are the kinds of issues that people have that they're working through to release their eating disorder, to heal it?
Well, when somebody first comes to me with the eating disorder, what we do first is really target the initial issues at hand. So we start the refeeding process if somebody's struggling with anorexia. We get the family involved so that we can work together. And there's a lot of psychoeducation and getting things stable. And then from there, I like to start looking at what caused this. There's so many factors that cause an eating disorder. Would you like me to go over some of those?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I would love that. We would like to learn.
Well, one, I think if I had a penny for every time somebody said, well, what caused this? I would be rich by now because, again, we assume that it's like this vanity thing, and it's really not. There's often so many different things. I tell people it's sort of like a recipe, with different ingredients that make up this. First, there's a personality type where a lot of the clients with anorexia, they might be more high achievers. They're more perfectionist, obedient, rule followers. They tend to repress their emotions. Sometimes they've got lower self-esteem and body image issues. They can be more negative or pessimistic or ruminators. They lack a sense of identity sometimes. And then for bulimia, there's more volatility and impulsivity. And then you combine that with sports, so many diets. When I started in this field, they estimated that we would see 500 messages a day. If you stand at a grocery store and you look around the magazines and you see this diet, this weight loss thing, people, these fake images of what beauty, we have this very narrow definition of what beauty is and what is culturally acceptable. And I would think now with social media, you can go on Instagram or Facebook and you could see 500 messages in 2 minutes of scrolling.
It's endless. It's an endless thing. And, Lisa, you just said, about the low self-esteem and all of that stuff. And I'm going to say that, there have been times in my life where I have gone through something that has turned my life upside down, where you spoke about those ground zero type moments. And every time I have had one of those, not everybody goes this way. Some people start to eat more and some people start to eat less. And this is also another misunderstanding, that people think that eating disorder looks like you're not eating. It also looks like you're, yes, I'm going to let you speak about that.
Yes. I mean, there's so many different types. There's anorexia with restriction. Also, there's a lot of people fall into like this eating disorder not otherwise specified, which means there's a little bit of both, where there's periods where there's restriction and then periods of binging and sometimes even purging. And the way I describe it is, if anyone celebrates Christmas, for instance, Christmas comes once a year. And I had a sister who would, when we were little, she'd wake up at 5 a.m. like, oh, it's Christmas, so I got to go open the presents. And I look at it like, when you're in that place of restriction and you're not getting the food and the nutrition that your body wants and needs and desires, then sometimes when there is food around, they'll binge on it because it's like that kid at Christmas. I don't know when this is coming next. I don't I want to get as much of it now as I possibly can, because who knows when the next time will be. And so there can be, from, a whole range.
Absolutely. And so in a way, what I'm saying is that when those moments came for me, when my world was flipped upside down, so definitely I had an identity issue, because I'm like, oh my God, now I have to learn who I am all over again in regards to what's just happened. And so those are moments where you could have situational, like, so to speak, eating disorders, right?
And another situation is like a lack of control.
Right. Okay, that's a good one. And they're both fitting into this, that when there's a crisis and you don't have control.
Yes.
So
well, not too long ago, Bergen magazine reached out to me and they wanted me to answer why I felt so many people, like eating disorders and other mental health issues, doubled during COVID. And I was saying, I think a big part of it is that we were all living through a trauma. We didn't know if we would keep getting supplies. We didn't know if there's going to be a food shortage. people didn't know what was causing this, and people were afraid and scared for their lives and really feeling out of control. Life was out of control for all of us, and there was isolation.
Yeah.
And we're designed to have connection with others.
Yes.
So I think a big piece of eating disorders is a control.
Mm-hmm.
If there's traumas, there's situations where you feel
Yeah.
like you don't have control, but you can
Mhm.
control what you put into your body or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
That can be very enticing.
Absolutely. And during COVID, some of the other things that were happening was that we weren't getting a lot of stimulation, and we weren't being fed, and our creativity wasn't being fed. And so we were using it. Maybe it was comfort food 7 days a week.
Yes, comfort food, or everyone's sitting at home idle and using their screens quite a bit, and again flipping through and seeing all of these images of diets, and weight loss, and bodies, and
Mm-hmm.
all the messages that they were
Yeah. And
inundated.
some people did go the other way. They started to really work out and really
Yes,
do
yeah,
well and really
yeah.
create their businesses. And we all had things to work through. And so it's very interesting. I really love the part that I really love that you are saying here, Lisa, that I'd love to reiterate is that, it's not about vanity, because but it's just not, so when you think, oh, she has an eating disorder, oh, she must really like to look good, and I mean, she looks good enough. I think she looks just fine. People say that. I think she just looks just fine.
Mhm.
And it's just not about that. You're trying to work something out. It's a control thing. It's a managing my life thing. It's a perfectionist thing. So I hear that, and its remedy and its healing requires going within.
Mhm.
It's ultimately going to be about what you're eating, and what you're not eating, and that's only half the story.
Yes. And I think
Wonderful.
you were asking what I would want people to know.
Yes.
I would want them to also know that this is a serious mental health issue.
Mhm.
Sometimes you hear people say, "Oh, just go eat a burger. Put some meat on you.
Oh
You'll
my
be
God.
fine." And it's not that simple. This
Mhm.
is something. It's. I tell people it's sort of like living with cancer. It's a mind, body, soul kind of thing that impacts all areas. And if someone just had to eat a burger to be okay, then I wouldn't have a job.
Yeah. And so when you give an analogy that it's almost like cancer, say more about that. Can you build that up for me? That how is it like cancer?
Well, with cancer, it's you need to get like chemo and radiation, lots of treatment. It's intensive and it's a lot, and it affects your body, obviously, but also it really has an impact on your mind.
Mhm.
And this is the same thing. It's like an illness that affects both body and mind and is just as intensive. If you need recovery, it
Yeah.
involves a therapist, it involves a nutritionist, your doctors need to be on board, and it can really consume life in the same
It
time.
can consume you, and it's growing within. It's something that's consuming you. Okay, I understand. So that's wonderful, Lisa. And so, um, what is it you have two daughters
I do.
that you are raising,
Mhm.
and as a mother who is raising two daughters in this kind of a world that we have, what is it that you do or don't do? What advice do you have for the rest of us raising our, I mean, right now it's not gender specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
One thing that my mother and my in-laws can testify from when my girls were little, I've been very boundaried around comments about food, bodies, diets. I don't believe in dieting. I don't believe, some people call foods healthy or unhealthy or good or bad. I don't label food. I tell my children, we still need 75-80% of those nutritious foods that are going to fuel our body. That's the main message too. What foods make us feel our best, fuel us the best? The fruits and vegetables and grains and proteins and fats. And then the other 80 or other 25% is life. Those are the snacks and the goodies that we still need and that are okay to have. Another thing I've done since my kids were little is I have them check in with their hunger and fullness levels. My daughter, when she was in preschool, the teacher was giggling because she's like, yeah, your daughter had to snack. And then she told me she was satisfied. And she's like, what 4-year-old uses the words, I'm satisfied? But mine did, because I try to help them like listen to their body cues and signals. Because
What
really,
a beautiful lesson. I'm still trying to learn to my body. I'm still trying to come to a place where I slow down enough so that I can hear the signal from my
yes,
body, because
yes.
it does speak. But it just so much happened before it
Yeah.
gets a chance to say anything.
I know. That's why I also tell people, try when they're in recovery, but just in general, try your best to not have so many distractions while we eat. Because,
Yes.
if you're watching TV or reading the newspaper, or reading mail or whatever,
Yes.
when you're busy and distracted, you're not able to tune into your physical cues.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
People will
Which
either,
is why we'd just eat more if there's like a scene on
yes,
the movie that's
absolutely,
or
yeah,
if
we're
somebody's talking about something
overload.
stressful.
Yeah, because we're too distracted to get that signal from our
Yeah.
brain saying, oh, I'm satisfied now.
Yeah, beautiful. These are beautiful. Any other thing around food and eating disorders that you have in mind before we move on to your
Just,
next
yeah,
subject?
just that, trying, unfortunately, we live in a world where there's so many messages a day about what beauty is. And I have a book that I share with children or young teens that talk about like the different, through the decades and years, like the different trends of beauty. And it's always changing. And
What is this book called?
it's called, oh gosh,
We'll post it. We'll
I'll
we'll
have to,
post
yeah,
it
I'll
at the
send you
in
a
the
picture.
comments.
You
We'll
can
post
post
it.
it.
Yes. Yes.
Body Talk, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
It's a great
We'll
book.
we'll post a link to it in the description. And so that's wonderful. So were you complete in saying what you were saying?
Well, I was just going to say too, just one thing parents can do is try to be mindful of not making comments about your own body or other people's.
Yeah. Like saying, "Oh
Sometimes,
my God, I look so fat."
yeah,
You're saying
yeah,
it to yourself, but don't comment about your body.
yes. And
Almost the way you're saying it, it's almost, Lisa, as if I am seeing body as an entire entity. And so why are you being so mean to something that is, that also has life and it's listening and that kind of a thing. So don't be mean to your body.
our
Don't say
bodies are
mean.
one of the most brilliantly designed systems out there. I mean, our bodies, when we get past these looks or appearances, it does so much for us every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
And that's something too, to like practice gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, one thing I also do, or don't do, I should say, is I don't comment on people's appearances. Sometimes it's very common, especially for women, to be like, oh, you look like you've lost weight. Oh, you look, and I'll just say,
It
thank
used to
you.
be the way we would speak before,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yes. It was
But
the
we don't
thing to
know
say.
by
And
a
in
person.
fact, people would say, "Oh my God, I met her there and she didn't even say that I look thin."
Mhm. I
Here's,
never ever say anything about a person's body. I'll compliment on like your shirt. You have a beautiful shirt on, or I'll look and I'll say
or
you
that you look very bright or you
yes,
look very cheery. Like we
or
did
so
that because
happy and
Lisa and I are also friends. So when we
yes.
met earlier today, we were doing some of this. So that's really helpful, Lisa. If there's somebody who's actively going through an eating disorder, or because you've had like a little bit of an experience with that too, or they are supporting someone with an eating disorder, if their child has an eating disorder, what advice do you have for them?
If you believe that your child has an eating disorder, seek treatment. It's something that you need a
Yeah.
professional.
But go to a specialist, somebody who specializes, not
Absolutely.
just a regular therapist.
Yes, that is one thing. I've had clients come in and tell me horror stories when they
Yes.
a therapist who didn't specialize in this and know how to approach things, and they can cause more harm than good.
Yes.
You need somebody who's trained and well versed in this.
Mhm. It's hard to tell your story of pain and to have to repeat it in front of another therapist if this one didn't work out. And it's very important time that you waste going to somebody who knows a little bit about it, but isn't specializing in the intricacies of this.
And
I,
also,
for example, am a therapist myself, and I'm here to learn about it from you because a specialty is a specialty, and that's the beauty of it.
Also, when finding a professional, if it's possible, trying to find someone who does accelerated resolution therapy,
Yes,
you do,
yes,
or EMDR,
yes,
like I'm trained in, because not always, but sometimes there's trauma at the root of
yes,
pain.
yes.
You know,
It
this,
really helps these two. I mean, I do ART, which is accelerated resolution therapy, and Lisa is certified in EMDR. And both of these treatments are able to release trauma.
Mhm.
And and that's a beautiful segue into your other specialty, which also was mainly what I practiced before I came into transformational healing coaching, which is betrayal trauma. And
Yes,
that too, I bet is I know that it's helpful to have this, because
yes,
sometimes you're just done processing something, you're done, but it's just stuck in there, that
yes,
image of something that happened, and you just need to release it so that you can go back to the decision that you have made for your life.
yes. Well, I heard somewhere along my training that betrayal trauma is equivalent to the same level of trauma as a war veteran. Like it's big
You
stuff.
have PTSD, yes, absolutely you do.
and
Um,
and those traumas get trapped in your body. There's a book called, are you familiar with The Body Keeps the Score?
yes, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, this is a really good book. Yes.
And that's where EMDR, or accelerated resolution therapy, that helps, like it's a mind, body, soul healing.
Even if you have cognitively and emotionally let something go, the body is keeping a score, as the book says.
Yes.
And and it needs to be released sensorially as well.
Mhm.
Um, when I have discovered that, generally speaking, when a trauma is great, it's a big trauma, you're going to find out in little pieces.
Mhm.
And the discovery, when it's staggered like that, it causes that's what causes PTSD and betrayal trauma.
Mhm.
What do you think?
I agree. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about your work and your understanding about betrayals and betrayal trauma. What is it that you would like people to know? There are so many people, Lisa. Especially when I started working on this, nobody loved to talk about this. I would announce it as my specialty, but nobody likes to talk about it, and yet every other person is affected by it.
Mhm.
So it's a very big topic, and you've seen so many people in this, and you've been into these intimate conversations with them where they're opening their hearts up. And what is it that you can tell somebody who's going through something like that on any account? It could be the one who's cheating, the one who's betrayed, the one who's being used for the cheating purpose.
I think for the betrayed, I would say, and even, well, depending on if this person has the sex addiction or not, but
Yes.
everyone needs to be gentle with themselves and compassionate, because when you've had this level of trauma, it affects everything from your physical, like just getting out of bed can be hard, being able to feel safe in your environment, trusting others. You, with the PTSD, you have sometimes these flashbacks that come up, these emotional memories, sometimes images, and it's a process. And again, an area that I think somebody should be pretty well versed in, so that they're not
Yes.
hearing the wrong messages of, oh, you
Oh
should.
my God. The horror stories I've heard, because there would be therapists who are saying, well, I'm married, right? So I can do marriage therapy. And I have had people who have had people who have there. I had a client, I'm going to tell you, she went to a licensed therapist who said, it looks like you can't get over your husband's betrayal. You should have an affair too.
Oh,
And
good.
so she's coming to me about 7 years into that affair, where it's become like a problem to her, with her,
Yeah.
for her. And it's just creating another problem.
Yeah. And that's, I've heard stories where, sometimes people will get either a therapist or like somebody at church who give the message right away, well, you just have to forgive your spouse. And
Yes.
at some point, the goal is to work through that anger and hurt and betrayal and pain and shock and get to a place of forgiveness. But hearing that right from the get-go is not the right thing.
No, not at all. It's almost as if somebody's saying that somebody came and snatched something from me, and
Yeah,
you're saying, why don't you give them something more?
right.
And we both know, Lisa, that, through forgiveness, it has to come from it's about self-forgiveness as well.
Exactly. It's sort of like the different stages of grief. The betrayal trauma is the same, where there's denial and then anger, bargaining, depression, and then eventually acceptance. And there's got to be a period for, going through all of that before you
Yeah.
can forgive. But you also, on the other end, you don't want to stay stuck. Some therapists will like just validate and validate and validate, but that person is staying stuck in anger or stuck in
Yes.
sadness. And a good therapist will allow you to have both
Yes.
for all those feelings, but then also let's take, what happened to them was never ever their fault, but
No.
unfortunately the recovery process and the healing is on them to do.
Yes. It is on them. It becomes a part of their emotional curriculum. And what you're saying is that if a therapist is just, or if there's not a therapist and you are just, because I have gone through betrayal myself, so I know that, everybody's going to be on your side, like, oh my God, oh
Right.
yeah, you got cheated on, oh let's get the pitchforks and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes it's helpful because you're like, okay, I got people on my side, but after a while it gets old and it's like, okay, I got it. And there is because I have been the victim in this situation, I can tell you, Lisa, that there's a pain in staying the victim.
Yeah.
There is a victim narcissism that can begin, where I might start to think that because I've been betrayed, nobody else has a voice and this and that, and I might actually get that. I might get that high seat where I'm the only one who has a voice. And when I get there, that's a lonely spot. That was never the game that you ever
Right.
wanted to play. It's like really working hard to get something that you never wanted.
Mm-hmm.
All you wanted was love and
Yeah.
softness and gentleness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Lisa, when you have come into this work, you've also done IFS, which is
Mm-hmm.
integrated family systems theory. You've done all of this beautiful work around betrayal. So tell us about your learnings, your insight. What is it something that you would want somebody who's going through betrayal or supporting somebody through betrayal to know?
Well, I think when you're going through that, yeah, I was saying before we started recording, it's sort of like your house has burned down. Everything that you knew, everything you believed to be true, everything burned down. And it's like having to start from scratch and decide, okay, I didn't have a say or control over my house burning down, but now I get to decide what I want to do next. Do I want to move to a new home? Do I want to rebuild and with a new strong foundation? It gives you an opportunity to really grow and learn and find your inner strength. This is something that makes it feel like the rug has been pulled out from under you and really shakes you to the core with your poor nervous system. But you can rebuild and come out. It's kind of like the kintsugi, where something has been broken and then it's rebuilt and glued together with gold. And now it's even more beautiful and more durable than it was before it was unbroken.
Yeah, and it's taken a new, more beautiful form. That's wonderful.
Yes.
And as people are working through their emotions, one of the things that I find that really is very destructive, and it really delays a process that's already we wish would speed up, is us running away from our fears. It's just from our pain, distracting ourselves. At one point, the fear and the pain becomes so much that all you can do is run. And that is okay when you're just surviving, and you cannot thrive that way.
Well,
And so, yeah, so
go
yes,
ahead.
go ahead. please.
I was just going to say, this is exactly what I'm thinking of. I have a metaphor about the cows and the buffaloes. Do you mind if I share that?
I love that metaphor, Lisa. I heard it for the first time from you, and I've never forgotten it. And I would love for you to share this with everyone.
So I'll share. I have a couple little buffaloes around my house.
We see one behind you.
Got a picture of the buffalo. And the reason I love buffaloes so much is because when cows and buffaloes sense a storm coming, cows will see the storm and know it's coming and run away from the storm. And they run and they run and they run and they run. And now they're tired and exhausted. And the storm eventually catches up. And now they're in that storm even longer. Whereas a buffalo, they see that same storm and they charge right for it. They go right into the storm, facing it head on. And because of that, they're able to get out of it stronger and faster. And I look at that as like a fantastic metaphor for life. You know, horrible things, you know, we live in a world, Glennon Doyle calls it a brutal world, where it's brutal, it's awful, it's hard, it's got really painful things, but it's also beautiful and wonderful and has amazing gifts every day. And sometimes when it's so hard, you want to just run away, but sometimes it's facing things head on, you know, facing our problems, facing our struggles, going right into them and taking charge.
And that's crazy to imagine that the storm is coming. Like imagine literally a hurricane, a storm coming. And the buffalo is saying, wait a second, no, I'm going to turn towards this. And then I'm going to start walking.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of courage that takes.
Yes.
And so have you in your life been able to encourage people to go that way? And have you gone that way? And what has that been your experience, that when a storm is coming, you hunker down and you walk towards it instead of running away from it? What is that experience like? Before people try it, why don't you just tell us your
that's what the
experiment?
whole premise of my podcast, Rising Stronger, is about, like starting from that ground zero. And it gives tips and tools and resources on how to rebuild and how to kind of step into your truest life. But one thing too is when you're in the storm, like suppose you're already in it, you know, being a buffalo might look a little bit different in the beginning when you've been beaten up by your circumstance or situation. Sometimes it's taking one little small step toward that next right thing. You know, it's not necessarily, I'm going to keep charging through. I'm going to just be gentle and do that next right thing every step of the way until you're out.
That's so important that you said that, because then what we can do is we can actually hurt ourselves with that judgment that, oh, I didn't charge like the buffalo. So I'm so happy that you said that every single tiny step. So what you're really saying is that when we're using this beautiful metaphor and we're working with ourselves in our emotional world, when we see that one emotion arrive, we're working one emotion at a time, and we're noticing the need the desire to turn away, but we're choosing that one time we chose to go towards it. And what does it look like when you do turn towards emotion that's coming that you maybe want to run away from, but you turn towards?
That's hard, right? Because we live in a world where we're told like we're supposed to be happy all the time and everything is instant gratification and here's a quick fix, go buy this, go get this, and then you'll be happy. But really that's an inside job, and stepping into pain, it's scary sometimes, it's difficult, but it's necessary. We have to kind of go into that pain in order to get through it.
That's right. Absolutely. One tiny moment of pain at a time, and having patience with ourselves, understanding that this is a journey, it's not a destination, it's going to be a marathon, it's not a sprint. And knowing that turning away from our pain is going to just make us stay in the storm longer and get hurt more.
And suffer.
Yeah. One of the other things that I'm getting from this story is this beautiful moment when the buffalo is turning towards the storm, because what they are doing is that they are starting with courage. So what they have to do is they just have to maintain the courage.
Yeah.
as opposed to being freaked out and having to bring the courage up then.
Yeah.
So that's really beautiful, Lisa. And of course, there are tiny, tiny ways to work with it. Lisa and I are both, we both practice integrated family systems theory, which is exactly about this, which is precisely about how do you meet every single tiny little hurt place inside you, and how do you take the disintegrated, exiled maybe part of you, and how do you love it and heal it and bring it back to the whole.
Yeah. And I love the IFS with both areas, but like with the eating disorder, for instance, there's a book, it's called Life Without Ed, and I really like it. It's by Jenny Schaefer, and she talks about what it's like to live with an eating disorder and kind of the thoughts and the beliefs and the behaviors around it. But what she does is she calls her eating disorder Ed, to almost separate, like that's a separate part.
Amazing.
Yes. She was talking about parts work long before it was really discussed. And sometimes people they curse their eating disorder and they're so angry and like,
yes,
it's ruining my life. But that part, when you do the parts work, that part came along when life was probably really hard. And it came to maybe distract you, help you feel more in control. You're suffering here. I've got something that you can do instead. That part really had good, loving intentions, but it had very,
that sounds like a great read. We're going to put that link in our description of that as well. It's just so wonderful to have a conversation with a therapist that, that has done her work, because not every therapist has done their work. And somehow or the other, we have so many things that we are interested in together. And I want to talk about just when we are working with ourselves and we're working with our parts. I have actually worked with them enough that I have a visual of each of them and they live with me. And I know this is really weird.
Really
and
cool.
they live with it's cool and it's weird, right? I want to admit that it's weird. But it's so easy for me, because when that part of me is going to be insecure, angry, upset, want to sabotage me, like I can see them right there. And it's almost like I have had so many conversations with them. Just like if we are in a text thread together, I don't have to say hi, good morning. You could just be like, okay, Lisa, where's the ketchup? They just text you that. So it's just like when I have a conversation with them, I'm not starting from hi, how are you, which is how we go in. And for anybody who has not tried integrated family systems theory that Lisa and I are calling IFS, it's one of the most beautiful and the most visceral ways to work with the parts of you to get movement. And notice how Lisa and I are both into getting movement.
Yeah.
Okay. Do the EMDR.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, we're going to grieve. Grieving is important. And then we get up and we're the buffalo. We got to go.
I always tell my clients, don't be a cow, be a buffalo.
Yes, I tell myself too, stop being a cow. Let's not be a cow right now. Sometimes I need to be a cow, and other times I'm like, okay, done. That's it, done. So it's just a beautiful, beautiful way to be with yourself, because it's not like you're ever done. But whenever you have a disintegration, the remedy back is just so fast and quick, because you've done that baseline work to create a relationship with each one of your parts in your life that got hurt, that you become so familiar with them. I love the idea of Ed, and I don't have names for them, and maybe I should give them names, but they all have like personalities. They're all part, like they look like me, basically.
Yeah. It's like that movie Inside Out, with joy and anger and sadness and disgust. We all have our parts.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's parts, I've done that work myself. And, I had this, I'm a brave buffalo when it comes to like all the mental health stuff. I'll be like that triple black diamond skier going down. I'll do
Yes.
everything. But with physical things, sometimes I could be a little bit more nervous or scared. And I used to hate that. I'd be like, oh, I hate that this part is making it so difficult. But then I did the work and I was like, oh, now I see how much that part really cares for me
She's
and tries to
protecting
help
you.
me and is trying to protect me. So now when it sometimes still may come up,
Yeah.
I'm more gentle with
Yeah.
myself and that part.
And so what Lisa is really saying here is that there could be any part of you that is holding you back. And really, it's not holding you back, it's protecting you. And there are ways to release it in the most beautiful way, in a way that when you release it, it becomes actually a part of you and it makes you whole. That is what the feeling of whole is, when you have loved, accepted, appreciated, and re-invited back into your life the parts of you that you admire and the parts of you that sometimes you're embarrassed of, the divine parts of you and the extremely human broken parts of you. Putting them together is what gives us the whole.
Absolutely.
So Lisa, as we start to say goodbye, any last words? And of course, I want you to tell everyone about your practice, how they can reach you, and your podcast and everything, so they can continue to learn from you.
Yes, my website is risingstrongtherapy.com, and that'll give you access. You can also, if anybody wanted to reach out, can I give my phone number on here?
Sure, why not?
I have a new number, that's why I'm looking.
Yes.
201-452-9586.
Beautiful. That's a good way to reach you. And what about your podcast? How can they reach that?
That's on Apple, Spotify, Anchor. It's on several of the.
Yeah, and I'm sure that if then they go to your website, they can get a link from there too. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything else that you'd like to say as we start to say goodbye?
I just want to say thank you to you for having me on. It was so good to see you again.
Lisa, I just love speaking to you anytime, and to be able to do this with you, it's just been fun.
Yes, it has. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for listening.